When you are almost no hit on back-to-back nights, that's generally not going to turn into many wins, and certainly didn't for the Orioles against the Rangers this week.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Thursday, June 26th, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles series loss against the Rangers, specifically these last two games. One they certainly should have won, and one that they really never had a chance in. I'll get you the 5 things you need to know from both Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll talk about the return of Jordan Westburg and Brandon Young. We'll talk about the Orioles' big 7th inning and still not being able to win on Tuesday, and what the Orioles offense didn't do against Jacob DeGrom on Wednesday, and then a bit about a recent O's minor league signing. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast. But first, just did want to thank you for making Locked On Orioles your first podcast listen of the day. We're free and available on all podcast listening platforms, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you could follow the show, subscribe to the show, leave a 5-star rating and a review. It really, really helps out the pod. And of course, we're here on YouTube. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. And if you do want to talk Orioles, ask some mailbag questions, whatever it may be, you can always email me, lockedonorioles@gmail.com. So the last time we talked, the Orioles had just shut out the Rangers. They got 8 shutout innings from Trevor Rogers to take game 1 of this series. Thanks for your patience as I traveled home from the beach on Tuesday night, so wasn't able to get out a Wednesday episode to you all, but here on Thursday to recap the final 2 games of this series. And it looked like at times on Tuesday that the O's were going to at least win this series. Then they didn't. Then they rolled over on Wednesday. And all of a sudden, it is another series loss for the Orioles. So let's start with Tuesday. Final score in that one, Rangers 6, Orioles 5 in 10 innings. I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from that Orioles extra innings loss. And the first thing you need to know is the Orioles had what seemed to be maybe a season-defining moment in the bottom of the 7th, something that truly could have sparked this team and turned them around. They trailed 4-0 entering the bottom of the 7th inning. They had not gotten a hit. Then they got a single from Ramon Laureano to lead off the inning and a walk from Gunnar Henderson. And they finally got Jacob Latz out of there in his no-hitter and got into the Ranger bullpen. And Chris Martin comes in. The veteran right-hander had been incredible this season. Had a great last couple of years with the Red Sox and now the Rangers. Entering Tuesday, 24 1/3 innings for Chris Martin on the season, a 1.48 ERA with 28 strikeouts to 3 walks and 1 home run allowed. He had, quite frankly, been one of the, top 5 non-closer relievers in Major League Baseball this year. And the Rangers go to him with some runners on to hold a 4-0 lead in the 7th. Doesn't walk guys, 3 of them in 24 innings. Doesn't give up home runs, just 1 of them. He's a big, sinker ball pitcher that throws a lot of strikes. He had only allowed multiple home runs in a single appearance once in his entire big league career. And that was a 2-homer game. And he had never allowed back-to-back home runs at any time. And only once in Martin's career had he ever come into a game and failed to record an out in a situation where he didn't leave the game quickly with injury, which has happened a few times. So it's not looking great for the Orioles to be able to truly get a big rally going against Chris Martin. What did they do? They got a big rally going against Chris Martin. It started with Gary Sanchez, who was the Orioles' cleanup hitter. That's where he is now. He's swinging a hot bat, got an 1125 OPS, and is coming off the injured list. Adley Rutschman's on the IL. Sure, Gary, you're in the cleanup spot. And he hits a 3-run homer to greet Chris Martin 425 feet to left field to make it a 4-3 game. And all of a sudden, the yard is rocking. Then Ramon Arias comes up. Little Oppo Taco poke the other way into the right field seats. Solo shot to tie the game at 4 off of Martin. 5 of Arias' 6 home runs this year have now either tied the game or given the Orioles the lead. He knows when to come up with a big swing. And then the capper was Ryan O'Hearn. Gets a fastball down the middle, drives it out to right center field for a long ball. All of a sudden, it's a solo shot to give the Orioles a 5-4 lead. Back-to-back home runs for the O's For Ryan O'Hearn, it was just his second home run in June, and the first time the Orioles have gone back-to-back-to-back since August 6th of 2017. That was in a 12-3 win over the Tigers. In the first inning, they got a 2-run homer from Jonathan Scope, then a solo homer from Chris Davis, and a solo home run from Trey Mancini off of Tiger starter Anibal Sanchez on their way to a blowout win over Detroit. It was an awesome moment. The Yard, a team that had been silent all day, just comes alive with that 5-run seventh against a reliever that doesn't give up anything like that to take the lead, 6 outs to go. It should have all been good. But the second thing is you need to know is the issue was the offense literally did nothing before that 7th inning. Jacob Latz, who was making just his second start of the season for the Rangers, the left-hander had been a pretty good left-handed reliever for them, but he came up through their system as a starter. They needed starting pitching depth, so they stretched Latz out. His last outing was in relief, but it was 5 2/3 innings in relief after an opener, so he's been a starter for a little bit now. And similar to Clark Schmidt, who threw 7 no-hit innings for the Yankees against the Orioles on Saturday, it's not like Latz was just completely dominant, missing bats and shoving. It was 4 strikeouts versus 3 walks. He allowed 7 hard hit balls. He did have 11 swings and misses against Orioles hitters, which is pretty solid, but it's not like he just dominated with strikeout after strikeout. The Orioles put the ball in play and just didn't have a lot of juice, and nothing fell in. The Orioles just kind of looked lifeless again on offense, and quietly, they were lifeless again after the 7th. I mean, yeah, they get the 5 runs before they even record an out. They go back-to-back-to-back. They take a 5-4 lead. That's one of their best offensive innings of the season, one of their most clutch offensive innings. The Yard was rocking. It was awesome to see that bottom of the 7th. And then the Rangers go to the bullpen. They bring in the lefty Hobie Milner. He retires the next 3 batters to keep it 5-4. And the Orioles had only 1 base runner for the rest of the game. It was a 1-out Ramon Laureano walk in the 8th inning. That was it. That was all they got. Didn't get another hit. Even in the bottom of the 10th, right? They're trailing 6-5. You get the zombie runner on second. They bunt him over to third and then go strike out, pop out, and they lose the game 6-5. Kind of similar to, not the same exact thing, but kind of similar to the loss last Wednesday in Tampa when they scored 8 runs in the 2nd inning and did not record another hit or another run for the rest of the game, and the Rays came back and won it 12-8. A little different because this was in the 7th instead of the 2nd when they scored these runs, but sometimes the one big inning is not enough when you're struggling, and that is what is happening to the Orioles. I mean, even in extra innings, they've now gone scoreless in 3 of their 4 extra inning games this season. Like, that's been a struggle too. Even when you get the zombie runner on second, that gives you a runner in scoring position initially. And when the Orioles have been, even though they've been much better lately, so bad with runners in scoring position this year, it can be even worse when you're just given that chance to start an inning. Just kind of rough around the edges there. Third thing you need to know from Tuesday is that Charlie Morton was not as dominant as he has been lately. In his last 8 outings entering Tuesday, he had a 2.29 ERA, 46 strikeouts to just 10 walks in 35 and a third innings. But that swing and miss stuff he'd been showing just wasn't really there on Tuesday. Now, he still had an okay start, right? It wasn't like he got blown up at all. His final line was 5 innings, 3 runs, 4 hits, 3 Ks, and 2 walks on 100 pitches for Morton. Allowed 6 hard hit balls to the Rangers in this one. But he only got 8 total whiffs and only 4 swings and misses on 21 swings against the curveball by Rangers hitters. His curveball command was still good. It was still his number 1 go-to pitch. That was all great stuff. Remember, he just didn't have that curveball command early in the season, which is why he was so bad. But he was on Tuesday missing the fastball command on the 4-seam fastball. And when he's been really good in these last 8 outings, the reason why is because he's had command of both the curveball and the fastball. And he's been throwing mostly those 2 pitches and having success. He's really had both in this dominant run. So the curveball allowed him to get outs and allowed him to pitch through 5 innings, but he still needs the fastball as well to be consistent. And that was kind of errant even from the beginning of the game. The first batter, he was spraying some fastballs arm side, just never got it fully back. So again, it was a fine start, a start that gave the Orioles a chance to win this game. And it's still part of a run where he's just been so much better than he was early in the season, but not the same swing and miss guy that we've seen for the past couple of weeks. Fourth thing you need to know from Tuesday's loss is the bullpen was kind of shaky in this one for the Orioles. It had been so great in the month of June, but not a banner day for the pen. They go to Andrew Kittredge in the 6th, trailing 3-0. He gives up 2 hits and a walk, but Keegan Aiken comes in and has stranded more runners than anybody else in baseball, gets out of another jam, but then Aiken comes in and allows a run in the 7th. Then the Orioles get the lead, right? 5 in the 7th, they take a 5-4 lead. They go to Gregory Soto in the 8th inning. He gives up a run, gives up the lead to allow the Rangers to tie it. And Felix Bautista did put up a 0 in the ninth to keep it tied despite a leadoff single. But that single was the first hit Felix had allowed since June 4th. He'd been on an incredible run in June. And then Seranthony Dominguez pitched the 10th, and he did allow the zombie runner to score, but only gave up one. And that's kind of your job as a reliever in extra innings. It's okay to allow the zombie runner to score, but don't let anyone else score. But he really, really labored to get through that inning, somehow escaped with just the one run. And the bullpen generally gets a pass because they've been so good lately. But this one was kind of a rough one. And the fifth and final thing you know, or need to know, from the Orioles' 6-5 loss in extra innings to the Rangers on Tuesday night is that the Orioles just made some small fundamental mistakes that really cost them in this game. The defense for the O's was pretty bad early this season, but they really have righted the ship over the last month and a half. That was kind of not the case for the O's on Tuesday. In the fourth inning, like Gunnar Henderson made a bad throw to home that should have been an out, would have been a big out for Charlie Morton at the plate. Gary Sanchez certainly producing on offense right now as he's taken over as the starting catcher, but we all know he is not the defensive catcher that Adley Rutschman is, and he should have caught a ball on a throw to home plate in the fourth inning as well that allowed another run to score. The eighth inning was tough. Gregory Soto allows a leadoff walk, then he gets a fly out, but Sam Haggerty takes off and steals second on a wild pitch, and then Soto's just not paying attention to him and allows Haggerty to steal third. What does the next batter do? Jonah Heim hits a fly ball to the outfield. It's a sac fly to tie the game at 5. If Soto at least just keeps him at second base, he got a fly out and then a strikeout. He ends the inning and the Orioles are still up 5-4. Just a little lapse in focus there, and that allows the game-tying run to come across. And then even like Seranthony Dominguez, right, in the 10th inning, he starts the 10th with a strikeout. That is always huge with the first out of the extra inning to not allow that zombie runner to go from second to third. And he does that, but then he still throws a wild pitch that allows the guy to go to third anyway with one out. And then they get a ground ball to Holiday, and he makes a solid throw to the plate, but Sanchez couldn't get the tag around to get the out at the plate. They called him out. They reviewed it, called him safe. That gave the Rangers the 6-5 lead. And the Orioles are certainly going to miss Adley Rutschman offensively. I mean, he had been swinging the bat so much better in June before the oblique injury, but they might miss him more defensively because, Gary's swinging it well so far, but he is just simply not the defensive catcher that Gary Sanchez is, especially blocking balls. Adley's one of the best blocking catchers in baseball. Gary Sanchez is certainly not. And with the amount of balls in the dirt that got away, you could see that becoming a big issue in that game on Tuesday night. That wasn't the only issue, but it was an issue. And the Orioles somehow, some way, right? I mean, that's a game. It's kind of like the game last Wednesday when they had the 8-0 lead and they lost. It's a game when you're struggling and you've dug yourself a hole and you've built this situation where you don't have a lot of margin for error here in late June. When you take an 8-0 lead in the second inning against a division rival that you're chasing down, you got to win the game. Same thing on Tuesday. When you hit back-to-back-to-back homers, electrify your stadium, break up a no-hitter, and then take the lead in the bottom of the 7th against a team that you are also chasing in the wild card in the Rangers, you just have to win that game. And twice in a week, they put themselves in a position where you got to win that game with doing awesome stuff. 8-run inning, 5-run inning, that was awesome, historic stuff that the Orioles did, and they still found a way to lose both games. It just makes it clearer and clearer to me. This team is just, they've dug too big of a hole. They're playing better, but their margin of error is basically 0. And when they're letting things like that happen, they're not going to be able to turn this around and become a postseason team. I just don't see it. But they did still have a chance to turn it around and still win a series over a team they're chasing, right? That could have put them back in a solid spot had they won Wednesday. They very much did not win on Wednesday. We'll tell you about, that was a tough one. We'll talk about it. The Orioles had no chance against Jacob DeGrom. We'll discuss that coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. That is Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. And if you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's at supplyhouse.com. So it was a tough, gutting loss in extra innings for the Orioles on Tuesday, but they had a chance to come back and still win a series against a wildcard team they're chasing in the Rangers on Wednesday. And instead, they absolutely laid an egg. Final score from Wednesday, Rangers 7, Orioles nothing, as the O's dropped the series. They dropped 2 out of 3, and they sit now at 34-46 through 80 games in this 2025 season, just shy of the halfway point. And going to get you the recap from this game. Start with what went right from Wednesday. Well, not a lot, but it was at least cool that Brandon Young got to return to the big leagues. Young, one of the Orioles' top pitching prospects who was added to the 40-man roster this offseason, wasn't exactly good, but he was back in the majors. Now, Young was first called up to make his major league debut back in April. He made 2 starts for the Orioles in April. Wasn't great. 8 2/3, 6 runs, 11 hits, 9 Ks, 8 walks, and a homer, and then was sent back down to AAA. And about 10 days later, he went on the AAA injured list with a shoulder issue. Missed about a month, returned on a rehab assignment in High A Aberdeen on June 3rd, and he made 2 starts in Aberdeen and then was called back up to AAA to end his rehab outing. And he made 1 AAA start. That was back on June 20th, and he looked good. 5 innings of 1-run ball, 2 hits, gave up a solo homer, 5 Ks to no walks. Looked like the stuff was mostly back from Young in that 5-inning outings in AAA. He was probably not 100% fully built back up, but it was good enough to at least be a starter if the Orioles needed. And the Orioles didn't absolutely need a starting pitcher, right? Tomoyuki Sugano was on regular rest to start on Wednesday, but Sugano had not completed even 5 innings in any of his last 3 starts. He'd been looking a little rough. I think the Orioles wanted to give him an extra day or two. And with the off day here on Thursday, Sugano is scheduled to start the Friday night game against the Rays. You give him 2 extra days off to kind of just get himself right and reset here. When you have an available pitcher with options in AAA, especially Wednesday's game was the final game of a stretch of 16 games in 16 days, it's nice to go to a 6th starter, even if it is just a spot start for 1 game. But again, Young wasn't exactly great. His final line in this one, 4+ innings, 4 runs on 5 hits, 2 Ks, a walk, and a homer on 61 pitches for the right hand of the Rangers. Got 6 hard hit balls against him. And I thought the stuff looked good for Young early. The fastball had good velocity. He was 93 to 95 like we're used to seeing. 4-seamer had its usual good ride on it, was getting some swings and misses. He threw his 2 different kind of changeup pitches, the changeup and the splitter, both moving well. Both got some swing and miss. But, he had been at 1 run through 3 2/3. He allows a 2-out single in the 4th, and he gets Josh Young 0-2 looking for the punch out, and he throws a right-on-right splitter, which you don't see a lot. Generally, when righties have a splitter, it's to attack lefties. But if you have a good splitter, you can throw it right on right and still catch guys off guard. But if you're going to throw an 0-2 splitter to a right-handed hitter with power, you got to bury it below the knees. Instead, he left it in the middle of the plate. Young takes it out the other way for a 2-run homer, makes it a 3-0 game, kind of rattles Young versus Young there, kind of rattles Brandon Young a little bit. Came back out in the 5th, walked the leadoff batter, and his day was done. At only 61 pitches, as I said, he wasn't kind of fully built back up yet. And I think the Orioles were feeling okay with that because they did have the off day here on Thursday, so it felt like they could empty the bullpen a little bit more, even though with Young coming up, they optioned Yarmil Geraldo back to AAA, so they were actually going with 1 less reliever. It was only a 7-man bullpen for Wednesday's game, but most of those relievers were available to pitch. And they, Scott Blewett wasn't very good after Young. Then they did get scoreless innings from each Baker, Soto, and Kittredge to end the game. But at that point, it was 7-0, and it was certainly out of hand at that point. And now Brandon Young will most likely be optioned back down to AAA on Friday. The Orioles will get another reliever back up here to go to the full 8-man bullpen for the weekend series against the Rays and go back to the 5-man rotation that they are rolling with. But I think he showed enough that, hey, it's been 3 starts. He's getting better. He's back from the shoulder injury. He will be back starting in the big leagues, at least at some point, you would think, later this season for the Orioles. And then when we get to 2026, we have a conversation about, hey, can he be the Dean Kramer replacement? Can he be in this rotation for the O's moving forward? What went wrong for the Orioles in this game? Well, it was the O's trying to hit anything that Jacob DeGrom was throwing. It took them until the 7th inning to break up a no-hitter on Tuesday. It took until the 8th on Wednesday. Jacob DeGrom was perfect through 6 in this game. He walked Jackson Holliday to lead off the 7th to break up the perfect game. Ryan O'Hearn also drew a walk in that 7th inning, but DeGrom got through it without allowing a hit until Colton Cowser rolled the ball through the right side for a leadoff single in the 8th inning to break up the no-hitter against DeGrom. He was pulled after that, so it was 7 scoreless with 7 Ks, 1 hit, and 2 walks for the veteran right-hander. Looked like vintage DeGrom. He was throwing some just disgusting changeups up there, but it really kind of is a sad state of affairs for this Orioles offense right now. They have been no-hit through 6 innings in 3 of their last 5 games. Clark Schmidt back on Saturday, Jacob Latz on Tuesday, Jacob DeGrom on Wednesday. Like, what is going on? They even got Jordan Westburg back. He'd been out since he left the game Saturday with that finger issue. X-rays were negative. Comes back into the game, gets the start, hitting second in the order. That should make your lineup better. Didn't matter. The Orioles got that rolling single from Cowser. They got the 2 walks in the 7th. That was it. Jacob Webb and Cole Winn kind of finished out the shutout for the Rangers out of their bullpen. Just another pretty lifeless offensive performance from this Orioles team that, after a really good June, is kind of ending this month moving in the wrong direction with back-to-back series losses to the Yankees and to the Rangers. And the shout-out for Wednesday night, the shout-out goes to it being Pride Night at the ballpark, right? It is important to hold these Pride Nights, to make, have a celebration of people in the LGBTQ plus community, make them feel welcome at the ballpark. I try my best to be an ally on this podcast, and it's important to make everyone feel welcome at the ballpark, especially right now. I don't have to go into more detail about what that means, but I think, and I will say, and I actually said this last year during the Orioles Pride Night game in June, I made it very clear on this podcast. I do not like John Angelos. I did not like pretty much anything he did when he was owner of the Orioles, and I was very happy when David Rubenstein stepped in and bought the team. But what I will say is, John Angelos did really, really go all out for the Orioles Pride Nights every June. And that was one thing I got to give him credit for. It was really, really nice to see. And especially in 2023, and Angelos's, final time he kind of oversaw Pride Night before he sold the team to Rubenstein. Like, the Orioles did one of the biggest Pride celebrations of really any team in Major League Baseball that they've done in a while. And it was really cool to see the Orioles do that. And then last year, they certainly still had their celebration, but it went down a notch. It seemed like it maybe went down a little notch here in 2025 as well. I hope it's not on purpose. I hope it's just something that happens. It looks different when you change ownership, and there's been a lot of turnover in the front office, and especially in the marketing and promotions department for the Orioles as well. So that, I'm sure, has something to do with it too. But I hope the Orioles still continue to celebrate, and I think they will continue to every June. And I want this show to be a welcoming place for all baseball fans, especially for LGBTQ plus fans, especially for non-cis male, non-white cis male baseball fans. Like, especially, this is a sport that for years and years and years has basically essentially catered to white men. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation of baseball and how long it's been an American pastime and a part of American culture. It has really, for a long, long time, been a sport that's catered specifically to white men, and a lot of time, in terms of the fan base, older white men as well. And I want this show and this sport to be open to all. I think this is the greatest sport in the world. I've been in love with this sport for 27 plus years, and I want others to feel that feeling, and I want others to feel comfortable feeling that feeling. And many still don't. And that is a huge issue, not just in baseball, but unfortunately in our society at large. And I do think Pride Night is an important part of welcoming groups to the ballpark. And I hope the Orioles continue to do that with Pride Night, not just with Pride Night, but welcoming other groups across the board, groups of people who have maybe not felt welcome at the ballpark in the past. This is this beautiful game that should be welcoming to all. And there is still plenty of work to be done. There's still not a player who is out in Major League Baseball. And I can't guarantee there is a closeted gay player in the major leagues, but statistics would show you that, especially between minor league and Major League Baseball, there probably are players just not feeling comfortable, at least coming out publicly at this point. And that still means there are certainly steps to be taken. And I hope those steps continue to be taken by the Orioles, by Major League Baseball, doing what they can. But it's important to make fans across the board feel welcome at the ballpark. And hopefully the Orioles do continue to do that. And despite a terrible performance by the team on Pride Night, hopefully the Pride Night itself continues for years to come for the Orioles, and they continue to not just kind of put a rainbow flag on things and celebrate at the park, but hopefully continue to make donations and help out with the LGBTQ plus community in Baltimore, in Maryland, and beyond when they do host these nights as well. One more piece of business to get to. The Orioles, a lot of catching injuries right now. They needed some catching depth, so they did add an MLB veteran to the minor league squad earlier this week. We'll break down Jacob Stallings and his addition to finish off the show coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action, why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Now, for FanDuel, it's really easy to use. It's a fast payout. It makes regular season games feel like must-watch events every day. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. So we finish off today's episode with an Orioles minor league signing. That is Jacob Stallings, who the Orioles signed to a minor league deal on Tuesday. He reported to AAA Norfolk on Wednesday and was actually in the lineup as the starting catcher for the Tides on Wednesday night. Now, who is Jacob Stallings? Well, he is a 35-year-old right-handed hitting catcher who's a MLB veteran. He has been in the big league since 2016 with the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Marlins, the Rockies, and now at least in AAA with the Orioles. Played in 563 career big league games, a 78 career WRC plus, so hasn't been great with the bat. And he's been about an average fielder behind the plate by the defensive metrics. He was with the Rockies earlier this year, and it was not going well. He was the Rockies' backup catcher in 29 games. He had 93 plate appearances. He was slashing 143, 217, 179, no long balls, a 33% strikeout rate, and a 1 WRC plus. That's right, a 1 WRC plus. He was 99% worse than a league average hitter so far this year. And finally, with how bad the Rockies have been, he was part of that. He was released by the Rockies earlier this month. So was sitting there as a free agent for a while, but he did have, at age 34, a really, really good, honestly, a career offensive year with the Rockies last year. Now, you could argue a little bit of that is playing in cores, but he was also good on the road, too. He kind of split time. Him and Elias Diaz had a catcher playing time split last year in Colorado. So Stallings played 82 games, had about 300 plate appearances for the Rockies last year, and was really good. 263, 357, 453 slash, 9 homers, a really good 10% walk rate, 23% strikeout rate wasn't bad. He had a 114 WRC plus in the big leagues last year. He had low chase rates. He had a really high launch angle sweet spot rate. Like, it was his only major league season last year where he was considered an above average hitter by WRC plus. He was a really valuable catcher piece for that. It was a pretty bad Rockies team, but that Rockies team last year. As a defensive catcher, he's a really great blocking catcher, got an average arm, and he is, at this point in his career, a below average framer. He's never really had a true standout trait. He's been like a solid MLB starting and backup catcher for a while now. Had a few seasons in Pittsburgh, kind of 2019 to 2021, where he was a really great defensive catcher. Has kind of gone downhill since then, although the bat has gotten a little bit better. But the question with how does he fit with the Orioles? Well, there's a good chance he never plays a game in the big leagues for the Orioles this year, but they needed catching depth in AAA, and they needed it badly. Adley Rutschman and Maverick Hanley are now both on the injured list. Gary Sanchez and Chadwick Tromp are your two catchers in the big leagues. You always need a taxi squad catcher kind of traveling around with you at the big league level. So David Banuelos, who had been in AAA some, is the MLB taxi squad catcher right now. Connor Pavoloni, who was a catcher they drafted maybe 4 years ago, he was in AAA. He actually retired earlier this year. I believe he's working at an agency now to help out with players, I believe. So good luck to Connor Pavoloni and his future outside of at least playing the game of baseball. So Samuel Basallo was the only catcher on the AAA Norfolk Tides roster. You absolutely cannot operate with just one catcher. So Stallings will go there and he'll catch some. Basallo will catch some. They might even call up another catcher. I hadn't checked to this point. Let's do kind of a live check here to see if they called up another catcher, because they had a few catchers in AA Chesapeake that they could have kind of moved up to AAA. Yeah, it doesn't look like they made a catcher move, at least just that yet. David Banuelos actually might be in Norfolk, so it looks like he's not with the Orioles right now at home. He's down in Norfolk, but when the O's go on the road next week, and they'll probably bring Banuelos with them. Maybe someone like Silas Ardway, a double-A catcher, might have to come up to Norfolk just to – you like to have 3 catchers in AAA at all times, and the Orioles' catching depth is just getting bombarded with injuries right now. So that's why you bring in Stallings. He's going to be depth for you. He could come up to the big leagues if there is another injury. Like if Sanchez or Trump go down, Stallings is kind of your next guy. And we already talked about, right? Go back and check out Tuesday's episode to hear, like, why is Samuel Basallo not being called up yet? Why is he still in AAA? And you might ask, hey, how about James McCann, right? He was in AAA with the Braves this year on a minor league deal. He had a rolling opt-out, which meant if any team wanted him to the big leagues, he could opt out of his Braves deal. Well, unfortunately, the Orioles missed the mark because right before Handley went down, McCann signed a big league deal with the Arizona Diamondbacks because they lost a couple of catchers. Gabriel Moreno, I think, broke something in his arm. So James McCann signed with the Diamondbacks. He is now their backup catcher in the big leagues. Maybe if he eventually gets released when the Diamondbacks get healthier and the O's still need a backup catcher, they still could turn back to James McCann, but he found a spot in Arizona right before he had a chance. Maybe, we're not sure if the Orioles were interested, but maybe to come back to Baltimore. That'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Orioles are off here on Thursday before welcoming the Rays to Baltimore on Friday night, but we will still have a Friday episode for you here on the pod. Remember a couple of weeks ago, I did kind of a check-in on the Orioles' top pitching prospects and how they're doing in the minor leagues. Tomorrow's episode, a check-in on the top hitting prospects. We'll look at Samuel Basallo, Dylan Beavers, Judd Fabian, Vance Honeycutt, some guys lower down the prospect list as well, and then we'll get you ready for the Orioles-Rays series. That's coming up on tomorrow's episode. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.